I'm Chris.
And I'm Kylie. And this is Redefining Resilience,
where we explore what it means to build a resilient lifestyle
so you can thrive in any and every situation. All right, Christopher. It's time to talk about introspection.
I am excited.
Why are you so excited?
Because I think introspection is a cool concept.
Why is that?
Because I think that's how you make the most substantial changes in your life, is through introspection.
What changes have you made in your life through introspection?
I mean, one of the biggest ones is not drinking.
How did you land on that? Walk us through your process of introspection.
Well, it's kind of twofold. I did my introspection through journaling. But in order to journal correctly, it's all introspection. What's going on in my life? What is happening in it? What are the scenarios I'm involved in? And how did I get there? What decisions did I make that put me in this position that I now have to deal with these people or places or things? And if you're introspective, you're asking yourself good questions. How can I avoid this or repeat this? And I landed on some of the problems in my life were due to my inability to handle them because of drinking, or my avoidance of dealing with them because of drinking. I'd have a couple Pabst Blue Ribbons and it's like, fuck it, whatever, I don't care. Or I'll just move on, or this is just life. The problem with that is the things that you hate don't change.
Yeah.
You just ignore them and they grow. And if you're not in the business of asking yourself good questions, you're in the business of dying slowly. And I don't want to be in that business.
Yeah, it's interesting because now that you mentioned that, I went through the same process with alcohol. My sister asked me after I was super hungover after a July 4th weekend, almost 3 years ago, so 2021. She was like, why do you drink to the point where you get sick like this the next day? And I was like, well, I don't know that I'm about to be sick. And she's like, well, don't you think that's a problem? And that was the question that I wrestled with for a long time before I came to the conclusion of, well, if I don't have a problem, then I should be able to quit easily. Like, I should be able to not drink for, a period of time, right? A substantial period of time. Like, I shouldn't need this substance to get through my weeks if I don't have a problem.
What's the thing everybody tells us when they're like, hey, you want to go grab drinks? I'm like, hey, we don't drink. Every fucking time. Well, I don't drink that much either. Well, I don't really drink that much, or only have a couple on the weekends, or well, every time that's what it is. The issue with that is it tends to be a lot more than you think.
That's true.
So if we look at like stimulus over time, that's the only equation that matters, is what's the heaviest stimulus over time? The most consistent stimulus wins. If I'm having 2 beers on Saturdays only, that you're not going to have any issues. Now, if you have a beer every day, all the time, which most people would say is not a lot, you've now introduced however big the beer is every single day. It's a very consistent stimulus. Your body is being poisoned every single day. So you're not going to repair or change or process or develop or be able to look at certain stimuluses the same, because your body's going to be doing something to get rid of the poison that is consistently put in it. And without introspection, i.e. asking yourself questions, you're never going to land on why it needs to change. It's just not.
Well, even if you only... I literally calculated this out. I was like, even if I only drink on the weekends, which was the truth. So I was one of those people that was like, oh, I don't drink that much. That's still over 100 days out of the year.
Yeah.
That I'm spending putting toxins in my body.
That's a third of the year.
Yeah. So I had to really take a hard look at myself and understand like why my behaviors were the way they were. And I really didn't even truly understand why I was drinking until I stopped drinking, because then I had the clarity to actually reflect on my behavior. While I was in it, I couldn't see the forest through the trees. Like, I just thought I was being social like everybody else. And really, I was drinking on the weekends because I was so stressed out during the weekdays. And then that would be how I would
unwind.
Yeah, that's the phrase that I hear all the time. I just need to unwind.
Yeah.
Well, I needed to unwind too, and it proved to be something that was not productive for me. It's not productive for our bodies. It's not productive for our brain health, which I learned all of this stuff after the fact when I decided to give up alcohol. But I think introspection truly was the catalyst that helped me make that change. And now my introspection is more of like a place of gratitude for making that change, because my life has been exponentially better since I stopped drinking, and I've been able to relate to other people who have stopped drinking, because we are going against the grain. I mean, we are going against the grain because the majority of Americans, 60% of Americans drink.
Yeah.
So I'm part of the minority population. You're part of the minority population. But at the end of the day, like, I'm very happy with my life now because of that choice that I made, because of the introspection that I did leading up to that choice. And what it really came down to was I came to the conclusion that, you know, if I have these goals that I want to attain, is this habit conducive to getting me to my goals faster?
That's how I landed on not drinking in the first place. So I signed up for Ohio's Strongest Man in 2023. It was in October. So the 1st of August is when I signed up for it.
That was 2022.
Yeah, 22. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And I said, fuck it. I'm not going to drink because it's not going to be helpful for my training. And if I'm going to get back into this sport, I'm just going to, I'll hold off drinking until I'm done. Right. I'll just have a couple beers when I'm done. Celebrate. Wasn't a big deal. It wasn't this big giant decision to never drink again. It wasn't like me on a pedestal preaching to the good word of being sober. It was just, hey, I understand the body enough to know that alcohol won't let me repair in time in order for me to train the way I want to train, to get to where I think I need to be in order to compete confidently. So I just stopped, that day. And I think I had a half of a rack of Pabst Blue Ribbon, so like 16, 15 beers left. And I just didn't drink them. And I went all the way through, competed, got third, came back. And to celebrate, I bought myself Zombie Dust. I used to love that beer. I took 2 sips of it, and I'm like, fuck this, man. I am riding high on this victory. I didn't think I was going to place at all. I thought I was just going to go have a good time. And not only did I place, I got qualified for nationals without having competed for 8 years.
It's pretty awesome.
And I'm like, this is really cool.
Yeah.
You know, maybe I actually am good at this sport, not just enjoy it. So I was like, okay, well, I'm just going to hold off till nationals. Well, nationals was 7 months away. Plenty of training. I'm like, okay, well, I'll hold off from nationals. It's like, well, shit, I don't need this at all. My life is so much better just in the realm of training and recovery. And then all of a sudden, all these other things started falling into place. And it's like, wow, shit, just a little bit of introspection opened up the door to make a decision that turned into all of these decisions that now equals us owning a motherfucking business around resilience and change that would have never happened unless I would have had that conversation with myself.
100%. And you think about it, one of the quotes that we had from our last episode said, we change for 2 reasons. Either our minds have been opened or our hearts have been broken. So in my introspection process with alcohol, I came to the conclusion that, like, well, one, I spent a lot of time with people who also quit drinking. And a lot of the stories that they would tell, I even went to an AA meeting just to see what it was like. And holy shit. Some of the stories people were sharing about, like, their rock bottom, I was like, holy shit. Like, this is heavy.
Yeah.
I could either wait until I am that person telling my story about my rock bottom. And I've had plenty of, we won't dive too deep into the alcohol conversation today, because we'll talk about that when we get to the health domain a lot of bit more. But man, it was a coming to Jesus moment for me in those conversations and listening to people talk about how, like, this substance literally ruined their life, and they somehow have managed to pull themselves out of the depths of despair. And I just was like, I can't let that be me. So my mind was opened. I wasn't willing to let a heartbreak happen and for me to get arrested, or even worse, like, hurt somebody else because of poor choices that I made. You know, like, a lot of them had stories of, like, drunk driving and killing somebody, or, you know, like, really awful situations, like losing custody of children, things like that. I mean, it's scary. And so my mind was absolutely open through those stories. And I realized, like, I am one bad decision away from that story being mine. And thank God for the power of introspection and reflection on our own behaviors, because it's guaranteed changed the trajectory of my life forever, because I've made that decision for myself. And, like, we found each other, and what are the odds that you stopped drinking right before we started dating, and it ended up being, like, the perfect partnership, because we were both living the same lifestyle. We both had gone through that introspection process and came to the same conclusion that life is so much better without it. I don't know that I know we would not be where we are today if we hadn't taken those steps.
And I don't want to be doom and gloom and say, like, everybody's going to end up with a DUI and, like, running over people with their car or whatever.
No.
But you've removed the possibility of it happening.
Absolutely.
That is so vital to understand. Nobody thinks they're going to be part of the group that bad things happen to. Nobody plans on it. Yeah. But there is a group that has willingly decided to neglect reality, and we're just not going to be part of that.
Well, and I remember when we first started dating, and I was in my new car, and we were headed to, like, a friend's house for dinner or something, I think, or a party. I don't remember. And normally going to, like, a party, I would have pre-gamed ahead of time and had a glass or two of wine in me. Well, we were driving there. I was stone cold sober, and a deer ran out in front of my car. I was, like, inches away from murdering that poor deer, but thank God did not. And again, through introspection, at that moment in time, I was like, I am so thankful I'm sober right now, because that could have been an awful experience had I not been able to react as quickly as I did and slam on my brakes and avoid hitting the deer. Like, I can't guarantee I would have had the, like, impulse reaction to respond effectively in that moment. So, like, there's been a lot of moments where I'm like, gosh, I am so glad right now that I made that decision.
If you chase that rabbit down that rabbit hole and say you hit that deer while you were drunk or drunk enough, and you total your car and it's undrivable, you're now going to have to explain to the cop why you're hammered and your car's destroyed. Like, you've removed that entire situation as a possibility from your life.
Yeah.
That's why I don't speed. I drive like an 80-year-old man on purpose, because I've removed the possibility of speeding tickets and issues with the police. I don't even get, when people get, like, all nervous when the cops come around, I don't care. It's because I know that I'm not doing anything wrong.
Yeah.
And if I get pulled over, which is like once out of like 10 years, it's usually something silly.
Yeah.
Like, it's just, okay, come on. I did something dumb. That's normal.
Yeah.
I'm fine with that.
Yeah. So what is introspection exactly?
The Googler explains it as looking inward to examine your own thoughts, emotions, judgments, and perceptions to explore your own mental and emotional states.
And I think what's interesting about introspection is that there are positive ways to do this and negative ways to do this.
This blew my mind. It is my favorite part about this podcast is we get in deep in the weeds in these concepts, and almost every time I'm like, holy shit, that's really cool.
We learn stuff too. So it's really interesting because the positive form of introspection is self-reflection, where we attribute meaning and significance to our thoughts and our actions and accept and learn from our mistakes, and we increase our self-awareness as a result. The negative side of this is self-rumination, where we obsess over our shortcomings, we doubt ourselves and our self-worth, and it can lead to increased anxiety, depression, and stress.
So how many people do you know that self-ruminate?
Quite a few.
Isn't it wild?
It's
oh
so
my
easy
God,
to do.
I'm not good at this. I'm terrible at this. I'm not a good speaker. I'm so stupid. My clothes are silly. This is ridiculous. I'm ridiculous. I can't tell you how many times I hear that shit.
Why does it sound like you're a female when you say all of that?
Because most of the times I hear it from females. Females are really hard on each other or themselves.
Yeah.
And when I have any of these concepts I'm looking back on, I think about my daughters. My daughters are really good about being really, really hard on themselves. And I mean, it's all like exacerbated through social media and all these other things we have that like the constant comparison game. But we go from self-reflection as a healthy thing to self-rumination as a very detrimental, dangerous thing. Because one, you're not living in reality. There's almost zero reality testing involved in that. And you're your biggest critic. So I can self-ruminate about my career as a strongman or a weightlifter, and I can immediately find 1,000 things that I suck at and compare myself to 1,000 different lifters that I'll never be able to compete with. Or I can say, hey, listen, man, maybe I need to work on some things. And isn't it cool that I have 1,000 people that are better than me and I can reach out to and talk to and become better because they're better? The problem arises with lack of communication to others, and you don't have the reality testing that comes with that. If you have a good friend that's honest with you, or like when we have conversations with each other, I'll build a slideshow or something, and I'm like, okay, give it to me straight, Kylie. Tell me if this sucks or not. Like my first stuff on Canva, you're like, yeah, it looks okay. I mean, it was garbage, right? But it allowed me to grow and change and develop and be introspective about like what I actually want out of it and what I'm doing and the time I actually put into it. Or I can be hard on myself and dig this big giant hole.
Well, I went into a self-rumination spiral the other day. I tried Pure Barre for the first time last week.
Oh, yeah.
Which is a bar workout. It's kind of like Pilates and ballet.
So bar like ballet, not like...
Not like the whiskey bar.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's Barre. So...
Barre.
Sure. I don't know if that pronunciation is legit in any language, but anyway.
That's not.
Yeah, so I tried that for the first time last week, and my instructor was pregnant, so it was a very manageable workout. So I was like feeling good, like, oh, this is pretty easy. I got this. And then I went in for another workout yesterday with a different instructor 2 days ago. Different instructor, and it was super hard. And my muscles were cramping. I mean, legitimately, my muscles were like, we don't move like that. So I don't know why you're trying. And I had to like sit out a couple of the movements and felt horrible about myself because I'm comparing myself to other people in the room immediately who I'm like, well, I thought I was a little fitter than this, but apparently I'm not. And I'm just getting left behind in the dust. And, you know, then I'm like, God, this is what's going to happen to me in business. And then I went down this whole spiral. And like by the time I got home, and then I went and did yoga right after that, hot yoga. So I had a like decently good workout and hot yoga. And like by that time I was just exhausted and my muscles were spent. And so I didn't do great in that workout either. And for some reason I decided to do back-to-back workouts. Tuesday was feeling extra motivated.
Wow.
Then came home and was like, Chris, our business is doomed and I'm a failure. It's like, what happened here?
That's not too far off the reality we live in. Most people do that. I'm going to go ahead and say everybody does that.
Yeah.
We go from a little bit of a setback to holy fucking shit, the world's falling apart. I'm a horrible human. This is the worst thing ever.
Yeah.
It's like, whoa, come on, bud. Like,
yeah.
Not only are you the most successful female I know and person I know, like you have all things pointing to going forward here. Like you're fucking killing it. And to come home and be like, oh, I can't fucking make it because I sucked at this Pure Barre class. I've taken Pure Barre. That absolutely beat the shit out of me. It was the most obnoxious thing I've ever tried to do. That and Pilates. I left all the time. I got manhandled. I left Pilates feeling like I had never touched a weight in my entire life.
I know. It's 3-pound weights. I was using 3-pound weights, and you would not think, but holy moly, those things felt like a bag of bricks on each hand. And yeah, I just came home and was like, I think everything we're doing in business is going to fail and I'm doomed. And, you know, it was doom and gloom. And by the end of me talking, I was starting to laugh because I had to make fun of myself a little bit because it sounded ridiculous once I let it come out of my mouth. That's
the kicker right there. What did you do with that information? You didn't ruminate.
Yeah.
You didn't just stew in your mind and say, oh, this is the worst thing ever. I'm going to die. This is terrible. You said it out loud. I am so convinced that communication is the factor that changes everything. That you came home and to somebody you love and trust said, this is what I feel. I didn't have to say anything, and you started laughing. You're like, oh, that's pretty silly. And it's like, yes, it is silly, but you don't see that it's silly because you don't hear it. The little voice inside of your head is a different volume and intensity than reality.
Yeah, I mean, I cried a little bit on the way home from yoga. I'm like, I'm a total failure.
How many times have I come home and I'm like, I don't even know why I play this strongman game. I'm the worst competitor ever. And you're like, Chris, get a hold of yourself, bud.
Yeah, you're stronger than 99.99% of
and then
Americans.
We can't see it. We can't see it if it's in our head and we don't communicate. We turn into self-reflection, into self-rumination because we're quiet about it. We don't talk. You don't communicate and you don't get it out of your head, you'll stew on it in your head and it turns into this disease that eats you.
Yeah. It's really, it's a slippery slope. And if you don't recognize that you're going down the slope and you're immediately going to like the worst case scenario, and I had to work myself out of that. Like I had to actively like tell my brain why everything it thought about me being a failure and being doomed in business was a lie. And I also had to remind myself that this is my second bar class. And maybe, just maybe, I'm a normal person that takes time to get good at a new sport or a new skill or a new workout, just like everybody else. Like, I'm no superhero. So, yeah, like it's going to take some time before I feel confident in keeping up with the class, and I'm going to have to get used to the fact that there's different instructors with different levels of intensity and difficulty in the classes, just like with yoga. And the whole reason, then I also went to connect the dots, like the reason I really like Pure Barre is because it strengthens the muscles that I use for yoga. And I really like yoga, and I want to get really good at yoga. And so it served a greater purpose. Like I focused back on what's the vision here? Why am I doing Pure Barre? Well, I'm also trying to do new sports to get outside of my comfort zone on purpose. So I put myself in that room on purpose to make myself uncomfy, and then I cried because it was uncomfy. Like,
which it sounds silly when you say it out loud.
I know.
So one of the things I learned a long time ago about the human body, I would get really frustrated when I would try like when I first started deadlifting, I had no fucking idea how to deadlift. I could out bench press my squat by like 200 pounds.
I assume you were sumo deadlifting?
No, I was not sumo deadlifting. You're just deadlifting at all. I'd never done it. So I asked a couple guys at the gym, hey man, I don't know how to do this. Can you show me? Well, the first set was just awkward and hard. Well, then the second set is a little easier. The third set, still awkward and hard, but a little easier. Fast forward 10 years down the road, I'm teaching people how to do this, and I've learned that any new thing is going to come with the inability to tell your body how to function because you've never done it. So yes, you might be strong enough, but if you've never completed that pattern of that movement in that way, with that weight, for that purpose, your body's not ready for it yet. You're having to train everything new. You're firing new connections in your brain, connecting new neurons, and creating new pathways to tell your body to pull and change and manipulate the weight in a new pattern. It's the same thing with anything we try to do that's new. So when people try a new, I don't know, a cooking class or a new job or whatever, and they're like, oh, I'm just not talented. I just can't do this. No, you haven't given yourself enough time. If you stick with all the stuff you're good at square one, you're going to be good at like 4 things. But if you're okay with the challenge and understanding that the body has to have a time to get used to the new movement and the new processes, you give yourself a little bit of grace and you can allow yourself to figure it out. But that would be the difference between self-reflection, saying, listen, I've never done this. I don't know how to do these things because I've never done them. The concept might be okay. I might understand it, but I've never physically done it. So it's going to be awkward and clunky is the feeling.
Yeah.
But the rumination would be, I fucking suck at this. I should never be here.
And so the thing we have to remember with introspection, we have to keep it positive and exercise reality testing. So it's when we go down the rumination, the negativity path, that it starts to become unproductive or detrimental to our mental health because it's going to create more stress for us. And we lose the self-awareness, right? Because then we slip into the dark side where we're coming up with all sorts of negative storylines that aren't even based on reality. So the reality testing is the important part of introspection. And, however you do it, just keep that in mind. So ways we can be introspective. Chris mentioned journaling. Another one is to ask what questions versus why questions.
I think you should elaborate on that because I love it.
Yeah. So, example, in my bar class situation, instead of asking myself, like, why did I even sign up for this class in the first place? Because immediately the way I'm asking myself that question, it puts me in a defensive mode or like a shameful talk track.
I think that right there, you've landed in a shameful embarrassing retreat from society talk track.
Yeah.
I don't want to tell anybody because I suck at this.
Yeah.
Why would you do that? You're always going to suck if you don't get help, you know?
Well, and then when I asked myself the question, what prompted me to sign up for this class? Now I'm reminded that, well, it's an accessory type of workout that's going to help me get stronger at yoga, and I really enjoy yoga and I want to get really good at yoga. So this is something that's going to help me build some strength, and it also helps with balance, and yeah, I just think it's a good way to get outside of my comfort zone. Now I'm starting to reflect, and I'm not putting myself in a shameful mindset. I'm asking myself more objective questions. Anytime we ask why questions, and this is coming from a neurolinguistic programming perspective, so this is how our brain interprets language. When do you get asked why questions?
Oh, when you do something wrong?
Yeah, your parents guaranteed asked you some why questions when you were a kid because you did something wrong. You know, why do you have an F in this class? Why didn't you do your homework? Why is your room so messy? Why didn't you do the dishes yet? Why did you pull your sister's hair? Why is there a hole in the wall?
I had to answer that question a couple of times.
Same. You know? So every time you get asked a why question, it immediately puts you in a defensive position because most likely you've done something wrong. And so we are intrinsically programmed as adults to get triggered by why questions. So if you've ever had a conversation with your boss and they ask you a why question, I had plenty of bosses in my career that would ask, you know, why is this not done? Why is this way? Why did you do it like that? And immediately I'd get super defensive, super emotional, can't even think straight because I'm so triggered by the word. So we have to be mindful of the language we're using when we talk to ourselves and others.
So just an example from being a father. My youngest daughter is a Spitfire, man. She's it. She's just got a ton of energy and emotions and power. Like, she's full of energy, which is awesome.
Shout out to Audrey.
Heck yeah, little tiny Audrey baby.
Audrey Elizabeth.
She's the coolest. But if I ask her why, like, why the hell isn't your room clean? Like, that's going to invoke a lot of emotions very quickly because it's like, oh shit, I just failed my father. Mm-hmm. If I say, what do you think the outcome is going to be if you don't do this? Oh, well, I'm going to get in trouble. Okay.
Don't you think you should pick it up a little bit?
What decision do you think you need to make in order to not have that outcome? Oh, I should probably clean my room. Okay. Well, I agree. You know, so you end up talking to them like adults. Not that I'm perfect at it, but you talk to them like adults. They make decisions like adults, and they make choices like adults. That way they're presented with an actual process that they can work through, and they understand the process. It's when we get put in this defensive mode that we put ourselves in when we self-ruminate. We're trying to defend against potential pain and injury. Like when you go to this class and you're sitting in Pure Barre and you're like, well, fuck, everybody else is killing it. Here I am just being destroyed. Clearly everything's going to fail. I suck. I want to get out of here. I don't want to be around these people. I mean, you could focus on the fact that you're not as good and those are better people at that task, so you want to be around them so you become better. But our internal defense mechanism says, I suck, let's leave.
And I was the first one out the door.
Yeah.
After that class ended.
Yeah, and that's,
I can't lie.
it's really normal.
Yeah.
But because we understand that this is how our body functions, we can start with reality testing when we start to self-ruminate, when we start to be negative about our self-reflection. And we can say, okay, well, maybe I am in a gym with a bunch of really strong guys, but what an awesome opportunity to learn.
Absolutely. Well, and it segues nicely into the next way we can be introspective, and it's seek out feedback. Just like what you just said, like you can learn from other people. Other people can help you be introspective about your situation, your challenges, your insecurities or your doubts, whatever you're dealing with. That could be a coach, a mentor, or a trusted advisor. You know, you've got all sorts of resources. Your trusted advisor could be your mom or your dad or your boss. Your mentor could be your grandmother. Your mentor could be somebody that you reached out to on LinkedIn and said, hey, will you be my mentor? I've done that before.
Yeah. I have multiple times.
And there's also a lot of really cool programs out there that pair early stage career professionals with later stage career professionals in mentor partnerships. And I'm involved in one of those, and I have a mentee, and I've always mentored younger women. You know, I get so much fulfillment out of that myself. So don't be afraid to ask for mentorship if you don't already have a mentor that you trust. And then last thing is a coach. I mean, we literally get paid to help people think through these things. That's what our role is.
Well, we don't just exist arbitrarily. Like if our job wasn't useful, we wouldn't be here.
Right.
So another add-on to seeking feedback, one thing I've noticed that's really interesting is that there's a lot of marriages that don't trust each other enough to advise each other and help each other. I ask for your feedback all the time, and you ask for mine. Like, we're in this process to grow together. Your relationship should be, that could be a fantastic way to gauge the healthiness of your relationship is, are you actually helping that person become better, and are they helping you? Because if you can't lean on the person you love and you spend them all this time with and live with to help work through these things in life, I mean, you're in for a difficult time. I don't know how you would do it otherwise. I literally don't think it's possible. I think you have to be your biggest cheerleaders for each other.
I totally agree. Well, and one caveat to this is if you go ask for feedback, be accepting of the feedback. You may not like it at first, and this is something I had to come to terms with because I have had mentors who I've gone and talked to them, and their immediate response was, well, you have to quit that job. That job is toxic. It's like, well, that really wasn't the path that I was looking to go down here. I was looking for more tactical tools to help me overcome a challenging situation at work, not quit my job altogether. So just be prepared. When you do ask for feedback, you have to consider the source. You have to consider who you're asking because they're also bringing their own bias to the conversation. And if, let's say, my mentor that I had asked at the time had had a rough situation and that situation I was describing to her triggered her and reminded her of this toxic environment she was once in, you know, that may be the solution that she came up with when she was in that scenario. So you may not always appreciate or like the feedback that you get, but it is food for thought. So take that feedback. It's a gift. You don't always like all the gifts that you get. Some of them end up in the Christmas white elephant. Some of them you use every day. So just know feedback is going to be up for interpretation, and you get to choose how you use that. So you don't necessarily, and same thing with all my clients from a coaching perspective, just because I make a recommendation doesn't mean that that's your only path forward.
So it's the way I like to look at it is it's all data points. So I ask when I have an issue with a lift or something in the gym, I ask, or in personal life, I ask a bunch of people that I trust. I ask 5 or 6. Because if I can ask 5 or 6 people, I can get a good general idea of what would be the healthiest, most reasonable course of action. I know that I can ask certain people about certain movements in the gym, and I'll get a far left field answer. Like, I don't know where you're coming from, bud, but you're good at this. I don't know how you landed there. Something I can't repeat. And I used to chase those rabbits. I would take everything that somebody told me to heart, and I would try to repeat it until I would get injured or I would burn out. And it's like, you need to understand that your position in life and your situation is unique to you, and your stimulus set is unique to you. So when you ask somebody for guidance outside of you and your unique circumstances, they're giving you their guidance based on their circumstances. So when we ask somebody that is older, say a seasoned individual in your company, about what they did at their time, you have to take into consideration it was X amount of years ago, completely different set of scenarios. So whenever you take in the feedback, like you just said, just understand that all gifts aren't usable. I think that's the best way to say it. I loved it when he said that. I was cracking up. You don't use every gift you get, but it's still a data point. So take it in, be logical about it. This is where journaling comes in big for me. Mm-hmm. When I get a lot of information that I don't know how to handle, I just start writing it down. Once I can see it and I can communicate it, and sometimes I read it out loud to myself, then I can start working through it. Okay, what are they actually talking about? And what's similar with all of these things, and what's repeatable, what's implementable, and what makes sense and is available to me? Because if it's not available to you and you can't do it, it's useless information for you. You know, it's essentially white noise. It'll end up causing more problems, but.
Yeah. And so with that, use your own discernment, right? And think about it. That this is the whole purpose of introspection, is to work your way through a challenging situation, or to reflect on your behavior or your emotions or how you're perceiving something. The last thing that we recommend for introspection is meditation. Putting your limbic brain to rest and allowing your prefrontal cortex to kick in and do your best thinking is the greatest way to logically and rationally think through something. But you can't get there if you're stressed out and in your fight or flight mode. So you have to calm it down. And meditation or breath work, mindfulness, that could be just eating lunch without looking at your phone, allows you the time and the space to think. It allows you the time and the space to reflect. And in meditation, I've had some of the best ideas or the best solutions or the greatest aha moments, or I call them downloads. It's like the universe is downloading a message into my brain. And I get the best downloads when I'm in a very relaxed, almost meditative state of mind. And you can get there through yoga. You can get there through true meditation. You can get there at night when you're about to fall asleep. That's when your brain is in that mode. So there's lots of ways. Just breathing deeply. Like, there's all sorts of breath work that you can do. Go back to the Chris Roach episode that we did. It's a few minutes long. It's a breath work, guided breath work that you can refer back to. I mean, all of these things are really helpful if you are stressed out about something.
I use the gym as meditation.
Yeah.
I'm very intentional about what I do in the gym, and it erases. It's like a clean slate when I leave. I spend an hour and a half in there. I get to just focus on the lifts. I get to focus on me. I get to focus on what I want out of there. I control all the variables. And then when I leave, it's like, okay, now I have the ability. I'm physically exhausted to think about what I need to think about and work through it. I can dump all of my energy into my mind now. And I've gotten rid of all the the willy-nilly, going all over in 10,000 ADD directions, and I can just focus. But like we've said 100 times now, meditation isn't sitting Indian style with your fingers crossed. Or thumb and pointer finger there. It's doing what you need to do to remove limbic system activity, to stop being stressed for a little bit, remove the phone, work out, do something, go for a walk. I fucking love going for a walk.
What you're really doing is changing the brain waves that you're using. You're changing your brain waves to a calmer state where you can think more rationally and access different parts of your brain. It's really what's happening. So if you want to do your best thinking, those are our best tools. Anything else that you can think of?
Nothing other than this is up to you.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to be intentional about this. Introspection is all about you traveling down that road. And don't be afraid to ask for help. If you start opening boxes in your head that you don't know how to deal with, there are some incredible professionals out there that know far more about how to deal with past traumas or issues or things that you don't know how to work through. And it is not weak to ask for help. That is so incredibly difficult to walk through things in your brain that you have either hidden or your mind has decided to hide from you, or just normal life. Sometimes life is very heavy. Asking for help is extremely beneficial, and sometimes it is 100% of what you need. Mm-hmm. So when you start digging through there, ask for help. Reach out to us. Reach out to somebody that's a professional if you need it.
Yep. We've got plenty of resources in our back pocket. So if we can't help you, we are guaranteed to know somebody who can or can point you in the right direction to find the resources that you need to handle whatever you're going through. And May is Mental Health Awareness Month, so we can't stress this enough. Do it for your own mental health.
And do it because you love yourself.
Yeah.
You're the only one that's going to save you.
Thanks for listening to Redefining Resilience.
To learn more about building your mental and physical readiness, check out odysseyresilience.org.
And follow us on Instagram, LinkedIn, and TikTok.